stressful, boring, unmotivating, even toxic. I really hope that does not describe your workplace or team. But if it does, humor may be the exact remedy for it. Creating humor in the workplace can motivate a team, increase their creativity, and make them happier. And a happier team means a more profitable company. And if you want all that and more, listen to our guest expert today, David Horning. David will break the typical stigma and fear surrounding using humor in the workplace so you can learn the actual science and benefits from using this free and profitable tool. Before we get started, if you're excited to learn strategies to help you become the fun leader you're meant to be, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon below so you never miss an episode. Welcome to Adventures in Leadership on Kristie TV. This is where high achievers go for the tools, confidence, and motivation to become a successful leader. Let's do this. David Horning graduated from the University of Akron with a political science degree. And then he took the next logical step. He moved to New York City to do comedy. There, he studied and performed sketch and improv comedy, and then he was featured in the New York Comedy Festival. But he learned a real life lesson. Not only can comedy be used to make people laugh, it can also make a difference in their lives. So over the last 6 years, he's been speaking all across the country to prove one thing, that humor is a vital leadership tool. Now today, you'll learn what humor is, what it's not, and how to use it in the workplace from a comedian that's been described as wildly unprofessional, corny, and not as funny as he thinks he is. Here we are with David. I'm really excited for him to be here to share a whole heck of a lot of good and fun stuff with you. David, how are you doing today?
I am good and fun. I'm doing great.
That's good.
I'm doing
That's
great.
good.
Yeah, it was a good weekend.
Awesome. Yeah, that's what we want, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
let's kick it off. Let's get right into it. I know all the cool stuff that you're going to share with everybody, all the aspiring leaders out there, especially when it comes to humor and how you can use it in the workplace. But we heard a little bit about you earlier, but maybe just like a couple little bitty more tidbits about David. You know, we got your intro, we got the basic facts, but is there any other cool little things that we should know about you before we start?
Dive deep into this. Yeah, laughing has always been a big part of my life. I figured out I could make people laugh when I was a kid, and had the question to myself, well, how can I do this for a living? But you get to that certain age where you start thinking, oh, I have to do something more realistic and go to law school and do stuff like that. So you're right. So I got my political science degree with that intent, but it was ironically enough, it was at a funeral where I discovered, oh, I love making people laugh. But
it was at a funeral?
It was at a funeral. Yeah, that was, I was pretty close to graduating from college at that point. And I was getting good enough grades, and I wasn't feeling engaged in my work and, not really getting involved. I was working to put myself through college while I was going to college, and just wasn't feeling like I was being fulfilled by, political science and law and criminal justice and things like that. And so we had lost a loved one, tragically. Of course, no one's ever like, oh yeah, it was ironically or whatever. Anyway,
yeah.
So she passed away, and then at the funeral, after a couple of weeks of just mourning and just being sad and feeling sorry and regret and all those emotions that tend to well up, I made a wisecrack about the funeral home that just made my family giggle. And then I was like, oh, so I got hit with those, the natural high, the endorphins,
the endorphins,
and the oxytocin. And
oxytocin. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do love making people laugh. That's what I want to do. So I had a friend of mine that was moving to New York to get into acting. And I thought, well, if he can do that, why can't I do that and learn how to write comedy? And so that's kind of the route it took. It just kind of took off from there. And I got real interested in psychology and human behavior, and thought, well, what if I could, I can make people laugh, right? But they'll forget what made them laugh the next day or the next week. And then they'll just go on with their life and forget David Horning was even there. Or I can teach them the skills so that they can call upon those same skills that I used at that funeral when they need it, and use that in a setting. And that way somehow, some way, David Horning is still with them. Whether they remember my name or not doesn't matter. What matters is they have that skill set where they can say, oh, this is terrible, but it could be funny.
Okay. I like it. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, and even though that was just that's your story, right? The really cool lesson to learn from that is you went one route and you're like, well, I should get this type of, because your expectations, this is what you should do, and this is what society tells you to do. And then you got into it and you're like, oh, that is not what lights me up. That is not my purpose. And that's a lot of what I teach in my coaching program is go with what really is your passion. And that's what you did. So kind of walk me through a little bit of how did you get into teaching humor in the workplace? Because there's so many times there's some more conservative type, serious companies than others. Social media and advertising might be woohoo, fun,
Yeah.
but like your law firms and other things, I mean, that's straight business, right? So how did
Sure.
you fall into it, and why did you think it was important to go that route?
I worked at a very toxic workplace while I was living in New York City. I worked at it was a comedy club run by people who probably shouldn't have been running a comedy club. And it was I looked at it at the time as my survival job. That's no way to look at something that you're doing almost full time. It almost makes it feel like an obligation, and nobody
Yeah.
likes, obligations.
Nope.
So the one day our manager, it was a very stressful shift, and something happened where everybody just laughed, and he bursts into the room and just yells at everybody, "This is not the time or place to laugh." And at that moment, I was like, we work at a comedy club.
It's 'cause you're at a comedy club.
Yeah, this is the exact time and place you're supposed to laugh. So I found that irony in that situation. I thought to myself, well, okay, this is not the only workplace that's like this. I mean, I've worked for other toxic bosses. I know enough people who've worked for toxic leaders. And when I first started speaking, I got into, happiness and how you can be happy at work. And that's such a broad topic. It was almost overwhelming to me. And I was speaking to HR groups, and I learned that there's not a lot of humor in HR. And, I've met with a lot of resistance, and some of it is my own fault. For example, after one presentation, I got an email from somebody who booked me at an upcoming presentation to unbook me from that presentation because he had just seen me speak. And he called my presentation wildly unprofessional.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, wildly unprofessional. Okay. And I kind of ran with that because, I mean, if you look at workplace happiness statistics, they're not great. So I'm thinking to myself, well, if that's what he means by professional, the status quo, how can we make this a little more unprofessional? And it's using that basic human instinct of laughter. I mean, that's an instant connector. It connects with other people instantly. If we can use that to build relationships in the workplace, that gives people a reason to want to go to work. If we could use humor to notice the absurdities and ironies that happen every day, maybe we're not going to be so resistant to those bad things that happen. So it's just a matter of honing that into a presentation that I feel can connect with audiences, no matter what line of work you're in. If you're that gung-ho, marketing, social media, or if you're in something a little bit more serious, it applies to everybody because we're all human beings and we all can agree that we want to laugh more.
Yeah, well, for sure. And I'm sure there's different levels and different ways of doing it. So you kind of touched on it just a little bit where you said you went toward happiness, but where humor and laughter really brings people together. What have you found are the benefits of bringing humor into the workplace? I mean, you kind of touched on it, but I'm curious now of maybe people out there that are like, oh gosh, yes, we're working in a toxic environment, or this guy's super serious, or, maybe they do work at a comedy club and the guy is a little too serious. But what are the benefits? Like if somebody's out there watching this right now, what would they do to convince their perhaps not so fun boss to put this stuff in the workplace?
There have been enough studies done that find the usefulness in humor in a professional setting. I mean, if you use humor during a presentation, the audience is more likely to remember the key points of that presentation because they attach, a powerful memory, a powerful emotion to it. So, and humor is just, if done properly, it can evoke that. It's almost like a happiness hack. You know, I call it a laugh hack, like using humor. It's like a life hack, but you laugh.
Yeah.
And doing that, you know, I was talking earlier about serotonin and oxytocin and dopamine, just being able to make a connection in a moment. So if I'm at work and I am stressed out and I have just this pile of work on my desk and people keep coming in and bothering me, if I'm able to see the humor in that situation, not only does it counteract the cortisol that's released by the stress that I'm feeling, it allows me to see an instant bigger picture. So when we laugh at something, it's our brain's way of saying, oh, I've never looked at it that way before.
Yeah.
And at its most basic level, that is like the first thing that I teach people, is that if you're able to laugh, you just see a bigger picture. You're not looking at the problem as a problem. You're seeing it as, I like to say, the setup to a punchline, or this is a problem, I need to figure out a solution. So rather looking at it as a debilitating problem, it's now a stepping stone to get to the next, you know, the next thing, whether it's a new idea, a new strategy for dealing with it, or, you know, a new way of connecting with another person. It's infinitely valuable. And you can Google right now just any humor in the workplace effects, and you'll find study after study listing benefit after benefit. I mean, that includes the increased shareholder returns, fewer sick days, more connection. People will find meaning in their work if they're able to, if they know that they're going to laugh at their work. We solve problems quicker. We adapt to problems and changes faster. So, I mean, I could sit here and list the benefits all day. I won't bore you with science, but I could if I wanted to. If you are thinking of pitching an idea of finding ways to use humor in the workplace to your leaders, there are any number of studies that you can find with evidence that it works.
Yeah, and I would have to assume that adding humor in the workplace is pretty darn cheap. Right? It's kind of like a smile. People say smile is a universal language. You can smile, it's free, it doesn't cost you anything. Just like recognizing people or giving them a compliment. Humor, like I mean, there's a ton of benefits you just listed. You know, you can have higher employee retention, increased productivity, probably more money in right across the board for the company. You know, the company can make more money, the clients are happier, the employees are. I mean, it sounds like a win-win-win, all this stuff, and it's basically free, but yet a lot of people don't do it. Do you know why they don't do it? I mean, I have my thoughts as why they don't do it, but I mean, you're the expert. So what are the biggest pitfalls? What are the barriers as to why, if there's so many benefits, why not put it in the workplace?
It's scary. I mean, it's new. It's a new idea. And it's that whole idea, well, we've been doing it this way for so long. Why would I want to change? You know, that because it means more work. Sure. I mean, short term, yeah, you're going to be working to add new things. And sure, you know, short term, I mean, we work in an output based work environment. You know, we look at quotas and that's like the end all be all. Whereas what humor does is it allows us to look at meeting those quotas differently. So when you incorporate humor, you don't look at quotas as quotas. You look at that as like, I can do something about this. You know, I can find new ways to meet those quotas, more efficient ways to meet those quotas. I can find ways to go past those quotas. And it's scary to think about because short term, it may not generate the results you're looking for. And that's the last thing you want to do is try it for a couple of weeks and then like, no, it's not working, back to the way things were. But any habit takes work and repeated daily action. And it can be something simple. Like you said, it's free. Start by finding the people who work for you or work with you who are already bringing humor into their work and lean into them. That's a good starting point. A lot of people may consider themselves not funny or not creative, and that's fine. You know who you are as a person, and that's good. You know, anytime I try to be analytical, I lose my mind because that's not who I am. No, I'm creative. I throw as many things against the wall and I'm like, okay, eventually I'll figure out how these are connected. But right now, you know.
But for now, not so much.
Right, exactly. So you have to, it's important to realize, you know, who you are. And if there is somebody who does brighten up the room when they walk in and, you know, excite the people that are around them, the person that you're looking forward to seeing, lean into them, lean into their use of humor. And that's a good starting point. I mean, that's a question that I get all the time. I'm not funny. How can I do this? You know, I obviously see the benefits. I obviously see that there's value here. So what do I do? Well, find the person who's already doing it and ride that momentum and allow them to do that more.
Okay.
Give them the permission to do that more.
So there's all these benefits. People don't do it because it's scary, but are there things that they can do to incorporate it? So let's say there's somebody out there right now that's like, yeah, we really need some humor in the workplace. We need to break this up. People aren't thinking, they're stressed, burnout, the creative juices aren't flowing. And we love all the benefits David said. We want that. How, like, what type of things can they do to incorporate humor in the workplace? Maybe like, let's get them over that scary hurdle. Are there simple things, like you said, find some of the more lighthearted people in the room, but like what kind of, okay, now we're going analytical, warning.
Okay.
Yeah. So now we're going a little analytical, like what are some things or some steps or first, I don't know, processes that they should do to incorporate it?
Start small, first and foremost. Don't overwhelm yourself with massive changes. Even the most curmudgeon-y boss won't stop you from doing just like a little small change. So like a humor exercise. So take something negative that may have happened that day. Let's say you had to deal with a difficult customer, and then just write about why you're grateful for them. Now, humor, a lot of people misconstrue humor as always ending in a laugh. Laughter is obviously an outcome, one of the outcomes of humor, but the biggest outcome is seeing a broader perspective. So that cognitive dissonance of this person ruined my day, why am I grateful for that? That's kind of silly in itself. So to connect these two unlike things, that's essentially what the process of humor is. It's connecting two things that are unlike in a new way to generate new ideas.
Okay.
So something as simple as finding gratitude in the bad thing that happened today, or finding irony or absurdity in this thing. Or if I were looking at this like a 5-year-old, how would I describe this? You know, it's just something simple, because you got to start with yourself too. You can't expect to incorporate any sort of cultural shift if you're not the first one to do it. You know, you have to lead by that example. And that's why it's helpful too to find the people who are already doing it, because if you're working alongside somebody who's already doing it, two heads are better than one. I mean, you know, that old adage, but it's so true, because you can bounce ideas off of each other. Second thing, I say, don't censor yourself when you're coming up with ideas, because that stops the creative process. The idea that you come up with today might not be the idea you implement tomorrow. Just like if I were to write a joke and I think, you know, something is funny, and then it doesn't work the first time, but I know that there's something there that's funny, I'll keep working with it. I'll keep picking it apart. Look back at what has worked, what didn't work, lean into what worked to fix what didn't. There's like little incremental changes. The first things first, don't overwhelm yourself. Start with yourself, one thing at a time.
So do you feel that incorporating humor in the workplace, like you were talking about, all those benefits, do you feel it also motivates people? I mean, do you feel that it do people kind of let their guard down and they just kind of go? I mean, like, can you use it as a motivation tool? And the reason that I ask that is I have so many people who ask me all the time, you know, how do I motivate my team? How do I motivate my team? Now I have obviously my own answers, but I never really looked always at humor, just humor itself, you know, personality and lightheartedness and being a people person, but never like really humor as a way to motivate a team. Do you feel that it could be used to motivate your employees and your team?
Absolutely. When leaders use humor to engage their team, studies have shown that it boosts communication. It boosts the motivation of their team, and it reduces stress levels. If you know you're going to laugh when you go to work, you look forward to it a little bit more. So you look forward to your day to day, because you know at some point there's a chance you're going to laugh. You're going to laugh with other people. If you know you're going to laugh at work, you're going to look forward to working with the people that you work with. You're going to look forward to dealing with your customers. It's almost like it almost builds social capital, laughing together, because it's a very basic human behavior, and it's the subconscious primal thing that really fascinates me. So when we laugh, we don't care about anything else right now. We are in that moment. We are
Yeah.
enjoying that moment. And we're looking, like I'm looking at my boss right now who's laughing at the same thing as me, not as my boss. That's another human being. And we think the same thing is funny. Instant connection. I mean, just on a basic human level. And when you respect another person, when you have connection with another person, you want to make sure that you're on good terms with them. You don't want to be thrown out of the tribe and left to die out in the wild. I mean, that's a basic human primal instinct. So we want to go out of our way to make sure that not only are we, doing our job to make sure that they're safe, but we're also, we're more likely to go out of our ways and do a little bit of extra work in that case. So I mean, just think about your favorite leaders that you've ever had, or your favorite teachers. And chances are they're ones that were able to infuse a little bit of humor in their lesson and not make it so lecture based. And you want to do better in that class because they give you that intrinsic motivator of, this person made me laugh. Well, now I have to show them that I can give them something in return.
Yeah.
But that's not something that we're thinking consciously, of course.
Yeah.
But, that's what's going on in the rest of your brain while you're thinking about your day to day.
That probably explains some stuff about some past teachers I had in high school.
Yeah.
And, a quick story about me. I'm not a math person, right? So me and you, math, analytical, you're like, and when I had dual credit honors pre-cal in high school, I was scared to death. But there was a teacher, his name was Mr. Hall, and he was the biggest dork. And he knew it, and I was scared because all of my math teachers up till now were very serious and I didn't do so well, but I did really, really well in his class because he was hilarious. The guy was funny, and it probably brought my stress levels down, like you said. And he had a different way of teaching. He did more group teaching among the students than just, lecture. But, besides that, the guy was hilarious. And I think that made me relax more. It was probably the first math class I'd ever looked forward to in my life. And now I guess I look back at it like, yeah, that was probably why, because here's a math teacher that's usually very serious, for the most part. And here he was acting like a fool sometimes. Mr. Hall, if you're still around, I'm sorry, but you were an awesome teacher, but it was because you were hilarious.
Yeah, I wanna have a class with Mr. Hall. Like,
yeah.
that's the thing though, is because laughter lowers stress levels. Now you're seeing bigger picture, so you're better at solving problems. You're not looking at a problem through as narrow-mindedly. Is that a word, narrow-mindedly?
Yeah,
it is now.
Sure,
Let's roll with
anything
it.
goes today.
The dictionary is always changing. I mean, read Shakespeare and compare that to today.
Yeah.
It's way different English.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, that's another benefit of using it as a leadership tool is it helps lower the stress in the other people, and that helps them solve problems faster, more efficiently, more creatively. And that's something that we need today.
I heard you say if you want to incorporate humor, start small, do a couple little things here, and then you can kind of build up and see how people are resonating with it, see what the benefits are. If you had to look at all the ways that you can incorporate humor in the workplace or just humor in your daily life, what's the number one tip that you would use for using humor?
Don't force it. Nothing is more painful to watch than a new comedian trying to be funny, because you can tell whether they're authentic about it or they're trying to put on a persona. Because and this is we all went through it. As far as, if you want to get into comedy, you start by writing what you think other people will think is funny, not what you think is funny, and then sharing that with other people. Don't force it. Know your audience. So those are the two big things. You can't yell at people to laugh and expect them to want to laugh or to like you. Like, that's not.
Laugh now.
Yeah, exactly. There are people who are more analytical, who do work better under duress, who do work better by themselves. If you want to incorporate humor into your culture, allow it to happen with the people who are open to it first. And if you can prove to those people, those more curmudgeon-y people, that you can have fun at work while getting work done and maybe even doing your work better, they're going to be interested. They're going to say, okay, maybe there's something here, and they'll join in their own little way. You can't yell at somebody to laugh and expect them to want to. know your audience and don't force it.
So you, just to go back a little bit about what you said, was people are scared to put it in there.
Mhm.
And nowadays with, I don't even know how you put it. It just, if you say one thing, the sky is blue, someone gets upset.
Yeah,
Right.
sure.
And and there's obviously nothing that you can do to not offend anybody, because we have how many billions of people on this planet. You could say the sky is blue and somebody would get offended, or
Yeah.
whatever, and or take it wrong or something like that, when obviously the person saying it was just stating a fact, right? So
Right.
obviously there's going to be some humor that will go out there and it's not received, or whatever. How would you, when you're talking about people that were scared, I wonder if there are some workplaces out there and leaders out there that are scared because they're worried about the backlash, or, oh, I thought it was funny, but then, and like you said, maybe they didn't know their audience, or maybe
Mhm.
they didn't know that their people were open to humor. But what do you say to those people who are kind of like really scared? I'm afraid to say anything right now because if it's taken wrong, I don't know what's going to happen. Like,
Yeah.
how do you guide workplaces and cultures through things like that?
Well, I think it starts with intent. First and foremost, is the intent of the joke to uplift the other person? If not, then skip it. Just altogether skip it. If you even have to question whether this is going to make their days better, maybe put it off till later, or put it off for a more appropriate time, or a different person, whatever.
Okay.
Was it you I was talking to who said you spoke with somebody who likes to poke the bear? I don't remember
Oh
if that was you.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes, there was a person that I said he thinks he's funny and he pokes the bear, and people are like, that's not funny, but he
yeah,
loves to poke the bear. I'm like, you're just poking the bear to poke the bear,
yeah,
just to upset people, but you
yeah.
think it's funny, but it's
There's
not.
there's a better way to poke the bear. You have to know,
Yeah.
is the bear willing to be poked?
Yeah.
And if so, what degree of poking should I do? Is it more of a tickle, or are we talking like, should I jab you? I mean, so
Oh,
yeah, so know the bear.
yeah.
Know whether it's a panda or a polar. You don't want to, the panda bear will just go with it, and the polar bear might take your head off. So
That's true.
yeah, so know your audience, and make sure the intent is positive, and also be open to feedback. If somebody comes to you and say, hey, that isn't cool, don't defend yourself. Ask questions. Well, okay, I'm willing to listen to that. What can I do better next time? So those three things, know your audience, and make sure it uplifts, and be open to feedback.
Okay.
Because I mean, that's something that you write. Those people who do like to poke the bear, when you challenge them on that, they get defensive, right? If you're one of those people who does like to tease, be open to the fact that it might not work, but also allow people to come to you with complaints and suggestions and ideas, and be open to it.
Hopefully
I,
that will quell a little bit more of the fear, because I know so many people, especially in more serious companies that are doing, serious analytical business or whatever it is, they're like, oh, humor has no place in here, because they're worried about seen as unprofessional, wildly
sure,
unprofessional, as you
wildly
say, those
unprofessional.
kind of things. So I hopefully that will kind of break the stigma a little bit for people who out there who are like, we really need some humor, we just don't know how to do it. Is there anything else that you want to add? I mean, those are the questions that I had that kind of popped in my mind, but is there something else that you feel people should know when they're adding just humor to their life or workplace or anything like that?
I found a lot of value in improv comedy. Just if you're not familiar, I'm sure you remember the show Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Oh, I love
And
that show.
it was one of my favorites, but I
Love
was a little
that show.
skeptical about it.
Yeah.
When I'd watch it, I was like, there's no way they're making this stuff up on the spot. But when I started doing improv, I learned that, oh yeah, no, there's a formula to it. And it's a very simple formula
Oh,
that I think we should
okay.
all abide by. It's yes and. So when another
Oh,
person offers a suggestion or an idea, you, instead of thinking of what you're going to say next, accept that idea and add to it.
okay.
And
Yeah.
then that's how they built the scene, is they would just continually accept what the other person gave them and add to it.
Okay.
So, for example, the superhero game that they used to play, someone would enter the game, and they'd say, oh, Captain Charisma. And now he knows, all right, I got to be charismatic now. And everything I say from here on out has to have a level of charisma to it.
Yeah.
And then the next person enters and, oh, you're the expander, you're constantly growing. And then they could take it literally and make the choice to just be eating everything and getting bigger. There's an infinite number of ways to yes and, but when you say no, it stops everything. Or if you say yes, but, it stops everything. And in today's world where technologies are advancing and automation is taking basic human jobs, we need to learn to be creative and to collaborate better with one another. Those are two human elements that will never go away, is our ability to cooperate and collaborate and our ability to be creative. You stop those right away if someone comes to you with an idea and you say no, or you give it a qualifier like yes, but. So it might not be a good idea, but if you accept it and add to it, that might spur another idea from that original idea that is the solution to whatever problem you're looking for. But saying no stops that from even happening. And the same thing goes to your own train of thought. A lot of times we'll stop ourselves because it's like, you can think of a million ways why something won't work, or you can just roll with what you're thinking. I do a lot of free associating. So fun fact about me, I have over 1,000 what I call transmissions in my phone, which are audio recording of me talking. So, when I'm on the road, I have a lot of time to work things out. And rather than try to write it out on my phone while I'm driving, don't do that. I'll just talk it out and I'll go back to listen to it. And it might be garbage, but I'll just keep talking and talking and talking. You can do this that way, or you can do it writing. So if you're dealing with a stressful situation at work, or you're not sure how humor can positively impact your workplace, just get out a pen, a piece of paper, a timer, set it for 5 minutes, and then write. Don't stop yourself. Don't even worry about being grammatically correct. Just write down as much as you can. Let your brain just go. And it starts a positive momentum. Whereas, in the moment as you're writing, you might not know if it's going to lead to anything. It might not feel like it's going to lead to anything, but you keep writing.
Yeah.
And then when you look back at it, you may connect a couple of ideas that you didn't think of in the first place. So you kind of yes and yourself, accept and add what you give yourself, and accept and add what you get from others. And that's what spurs the creative process much better than saying no.
I have heard yes and before, but it's usually when you're just in conversation and that's it. But you literally just kind of put almost the science behind this is exactly why you do it, is because it spurs that creativity. And I've usually not heard somebody explain it like you're yes anding yourself. Usually it's, a two-person conversation or a group or a team meeting or whatever. But that's a really good idea, is to do it for yourself so you can kind of expand your creativity. So I'm kind of seeing a connection between the more humor that perhaps that you add in your life and in your work, that the more creative you're going to be, less stress, like you're just going to expand more. And no, it's not unprofessional. I mean, well, I guess there are some things that you could do that would be like ixnay on the professional A. But
there's a line.
Yeah, there's a line, right? But it just sounds like there's so many benefits that, maybe unheard benefits that are to humor. So
yeah, that's the big one is creativity, just allowing people the freedom to be creative.
Yeah.
And the thing about creativity is a lot of people just instantly connect that with being artistic. Creativity is just finding new ways to, it can be as simple as going a different route to work. Like it just changes you don't want that routine. The routine, when you get into a routine, it limits our creativity. It can be something as simple as listening to a comedy podcast or a comedy album on your way to work rather than the news. Or, like I said, taking a different route home, just something to break up, just little things that you can do that can expand your possibilities when you sit down with a problem.
Well, cool. Well, yeah, you sure did bridge a lot of gaps between humor. It's not just laughing. It's not just jokes. You literally broadened my mind and thought process behind humor and all the benefits. For the people out there who might be seeing you for the first time, you already said that you had like 1,000 voice transmissions. Is there, but is
Yeah.
there like another cool, interesting thing about David that we should know? Or
I love bombing.
you love what?
Bombing. I love when I get on stage and
Bombing as in not
everything,
doing well?
bombing as in not doing well. And here's why.
Okay.
That's absurd to now that
A
I'm
little
saying
bit.
it out loud to another human being. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, that's weird. But no, I do, because we live in a world that is wildly imperfect, that nothing ever goes as planned. I mean, there's
Okay.
always something that's gonna happen that's gonna break up your plans and ruin everything in the moment. But
Yeah.
in hindsight, nothing ever goes as planned. But we're trying to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
We want to put on this persona that, oh, I'm I'm a leader, I'm never wrong, I always win. And it's like, you're not a human being then.
Yeah, that's true.
People don't like you now.
Yeah. Nobody likes
So
you. Nobody can relate to you.
right.
Yeah.
So I look at getting on stage and falling flat on my face first and foremost. Oh, this is a story for later. But also, I don't learn anything if everything goes well, because I'm like, oh, I can get up on stage and not even try, and everyone's laughing. I would rather bomb every time than have that every time, because I have no room to grow if that's what's happening. And it happens, not always on like paid book shows, but in open mics and things like that when I'm trying new things.
Yeah.
And this is kind of this goes back into incorporating humor into work too. I'll try something that I think is funny and it won't connect with the audience. So now I'm like, all right, how do I fix this? So I'll listen back to one of those transmissions or recordings, and I'll find maybe I got one laugh. Okay, let me focus on that. How can I use that to make where I fell short better?
Mm-hmm.
So the one thing that went well, how can I fix everything else that went wrong using that? I have grown so much more by just leaning into the bomb than resisting it or getting off stage and being delusional about it.
Right.
It's just trying something, being honest about the results, course correcting, and trying again. Because the moment that it does get the laugh that I was looking for, all the times it bombed, is the most rewarding experience. Bomb. Be open to bombing. Don't let it define you. It's just a step. It's a setup to your next punchline. It's a stepping stone to your next solution.
Yeah, that's probably the first time when I've asked somebody what, like some cool thing. They're like, I love bombing and failing.
Yeah.
Right. Like, yes, woo, it really,
I messed up. High five.
You
I mean,
do.
in the moment, I'm like, okay, this sucks. I hate it.
Yeah, of course.
But the second I separate myself from it a little bit, and that's another useful thing that humor does, is if you're able to laugh, you separate yourself from it. You give yourself power over whatever it is that you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
but the second I could do that, it's like, oh, this is great, because the payoff is going to be huge when I get to it.
That's really, I even though that was like a fun, interesting fact about you, that was literally like an awesome leadership, like it's like a hidden leadership tip at the same time, because just like when you're going on stage and you're writing your jokes, scripts, your skits or whatever it is, if you're trying something new, you're risking, right? You're
Sure.
risking and saying, this may or may not work. This is brand new stuff. Let's see how it goes. And maybe, out of the 100 things that you said, you got 2 laughs and you're like, okay, well, I mean, that would really be bad, but
yeah. My ratio isn't that bad. I will say.
I'm definitely getting off stage.
Yeah.
But let's say, out of, different things, you got, the 2 laughs at this particular moment, you concentrated on the positive of that and said, okay, well, this stuff didn't resonate. No big. I'll just get rid of it. That's fine. Or I'll tweak it in some way, shape, or form. I'll throw gas on the positive fire and I'll make that awesome. And now if I can just figure out how to keep making those little fires, I'll be on fire. And then my whole thing, people will just be like falling off the chair and it'll be positive, it'll be successful. I mean, the same thing goes with leadership and people who are risk adverse and worried about making mistakes and failing and things like that. I mean, here you are like, yeah, like bring it on.
Right.
Because on the back end of this, when you learn from it, you're going to be just totally awesome on stage and just be like showered with laughter and people are going to love it and remember it and all that kind of stuff. It's a really good lesson that I hope all of the people out there that tend to be perfectionists. I'm a recovering perfectionist. Momming could probably be your best thing in your arsenal of improvement and growth in your leadership journey. So I'm glad that it kind of came from a different industry, right? Such as comedy.
Yeah.
Say, how do you think these comedians get as good as they do?
Right. You when you watch a special on Netflix, that is years of bombing that have led up to that special,
Mm-hmm.
And another thing, you get that instant feedback from the audience too. And that's why it's important to listen to feedback, So if you're not getting laughs, that's a sign that maybe I should work with this, And I'm very open too. If another comic comes to me afterwards and gives me an idea, very open to that idea. Even if it doesn't make any sense to what I'm doing, it's a different perspective. So there's at least something I can look at it from that angle and see,
Yeah, you're doing the yes and,
Of course.
Well, cool. Well, David, it was awesome and fun as I thought it would be chatting with you. And hopefully everybody out there got a lot of good tidbits. And if somebody out there, a company, organization, or, like you said, maybe an HR department is looking to hire you to come in and teach all this great stuff, like one-on-one, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, the best way is through my website, watercoolercomedy.org. There is a chat feature on there. That goes right to me directly. No robots. I didn't hire any robots for that. So it's just me. You'll be talking to me directly. Or if you want to book a free call, go to the booking page on my website. It's watercoolercomedy.org/booking. And the very top option is a half-hour consultation. And yeah, you can see if there's a good fit and explore whether you want me as a speaker, or if you're looking for a little one-on-one training, or if you're looking for a new onboarding program for new hires. And that's a totally different can of worms. So
we'll have to have you on here another time and say, okay, now let's go into the brand new people that are coming in. Good. Awesome. Well, hopefully you got a lot out of today, everybody listening. David, thanks again for being here. I hope you had a good time.
Oh, so nice talking with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for taking the time. So hopefully everybody out there, you got a little bit more info on how you can add humor and why you really should add humor. You should really be thinking about it. Hopefully that helped you in your leadership journey. So we will see you next time.
And cut.
And cut. And scene.
Didn't it feel good to just smile and relax? When you open yourself and your team up to positive humor, it can bring out the best in everyone. Creative juices start flowing, people get excited, and that's what we all want as leaders, right? People passionate to do what they do best. Now, I know I learned a lot from David, but I really want to hear from you. What did you learn today? What was your biggest aha moment? Let me know in the comments below. And on top of that, what action are you going to take? What tip did you learn that you're going to put into action to include more humor in the workplace? Or how will you change your view of humor? Let me know in those comments below. And if you loved what you learned today, give this video a thumbs up. If you loved what you saw today and you want more, you got it. Just hit the subscribe button and the bell icon below so you never miss an episode. And if you know somebody who would love to hear more expert interviews like this, leadership tips and motivational stories, well, hit the share button and share it with them. They may just thank you for it. Thanks for tuning in to Kristie TV, and don't shy away from that laugh. Do you want to be a confident, next-level leader, but your job doesn't offer any solid training? Are you unsure of how or where to start? Then let's talk. Schedule a free leadership strategy session with me. If you're a driven professional and you're serious about taking your success to the next level, just click the link in the description below. We'll talk about your challenges and next steps you can take to be the leader you're meant to be. Let's move you forward now.